Welcome, everybody. Dr. Michelle's Wild Warrior podcast. I'm so thrilled to have you all here. And today, for his second appearance, I have my one of my favorite humans in the world, Coach Thomas Benge. And he is a retired sergeant from the police force and a long-standing martial artist, ever in training. He is a fitness coach, Strong First certified, and he's also a revered preacher at a community church in Redmond, Oregon. So I'm super privileged and honored to have you here today. And, you know, all of those things mean a lot, but really what means the most to me, Coach, is the fact that you're my mentor. And I revisited our original podcast this morning, as a matter of fact, just to kind of refresh on where we have come. And I think when we recorded that, I wasn't even training with you yet. So it was so interesting just to kind of hear our communication at that point, and then just fast forwarding, you know, almost a year later, and the growth and depth of our rapport, and then also just me as a human. I really attribute a lot of that change and beautiful growth to you. So I'm so honored to have you here today for my episode, Race to Be Human.
I'm excited to be with you.
Yes. Well, I appreciate your time always, and I am looking forward to some great conversation here today. I just wanted to start briefly, and then I'm going to give you the reins here. But I was thinking about some things this morning about our topic today. And this whole year, I feel like year and a half, I guess now, has been so much about everything but being human. We've talked about a virus. We've put people in isolation. We've disconnected. We've been very divisive in our social, endeavors, I think, as a nation, as a society. And so in hearkening to the idea of worry being a misuse of the imagination, where we focus on things that aren't real and that we fear, I was thinking that today it'd be nice to kind of focus on what we hope for and what will actually unite us and bring us together. And so that was kind of my little thought as we intro today. So,
Doc, thank you so much for having me back on your podcast again. And you're right. Just I have looked at our relationship over the past year, and it has enhanced my life immensely as well. So the benefit, I hope is felt this way as well. When somebody opens their life to you and lets you become a part of it, I don't know how you can't help but grow in that process as well. So thank you to you. Your opening is really deep on a lot of different levels, and I think the biggest thing to start is we have to come to a place where we understand what is really driving us. And I think at the heart of a lot of what has driven us specifically over the past year has been fear. We've been afraid. We are afraid of this virus that we can't see. We are afraid that people won't see us, and so I think in an attempt to deal with the fear, to have some control, to feel that there is value, maybe we have just swung past ultimately where we want to be, and we're missing the big picture, and that is we can't, I don't think we can really totally unify when the emphasis is on division, and depending on who you talk to, they would say, well, that's not the case. I kind of sit back and look at it and say, well, everything that we're attempting to do to bring us together is really focused on all of the things that separate us out, from how we deal with the virus to how we deal with issues of race and equality to all of those things. So I believe that we have to accept and acknowledge that at the core of a lot of that, we're being driven by fear. And if we could maybe start there and say, I'm afraid, you're afraid, we're all afraid for reasons that seem to make sense to us. If we could start the conversation there, then maybe we would have something to work with instead of looking at the symptoms. You can't fix a disease. You understand this, Doc? Looking just dealing with the symptoms. I have to get to the root of it. What's causing it? Um, so that's probably where I would start us on this topic of conversation. I've just watched over this past year and a half or so, just how afraid I think people generally, I'm not speaking about anybody specifically, but generally people just feel very afraid. And when we're afraid, we can respond in some very unpredictable and unhealthy ways. So,
Yes, I definitely agree. And I think, I always believe that the pendulum kind of swings both directions equally eventually. And there's always kind of that low in the middle. And I like the idea of duality being kind of necessary in order to see the unification and uniting of people. And you mentioned race, and I think that's such a relevant subject these days, and I just appreciate your perspective so much on it. Well, one, because you always have your kind of calm demeanor around these subjects, which is also why I like training martial arts with you, because I know I'm safe. But this kind of divisive nature that we've seen coming through, this pointing out of differences instead of honoring them as uniqueness and individuality. One of my gurus that I listened to, he was speaking about the rays of the sun as being, they're from the sun, they're part of the sun, they're representative of it, but they are not actually the sun, right?
Right.
And you could apply that to any higher power, God or universe or energy or whatever it is that you resonate with.
Right.
And that we are kind of tendrils of that that unification, that source, right?
Right.
And I think that so much of what's happened this year has caused us to forget. And I think you're right, the fear definitely has a role in that. And so, my question, I guess, to you and to, all beings is, what do we do about it? Where do we go from here?
Wow. Another really great question. Based on how I see things, and you alluded in the introduction, I have the awesome honor to serve as the senior teaching pastor at a church. So a lot of how I tend to start is framed by that. So if I may, I will speak from that framework. Based on where I live, I kind of go, I believe that we all extend or bear the image of the original, that in my speak being God. So when I look at you, I don't see the things that make you so uniquely different from me, other than to appreciate them. I think that your uniqueness adds depth to our relationship, if that makes sense. In the book of Ephesians, the Apostle Paul says that we are his workmanship. And the Greek word for workmanship is an interesting word to me. It's the Greek word poiema, where we would get the word poem. So when I think about all of us, every single person, when I look at Doc Mattingly, I see God's unique poem expressed in you. So it's his beautiful expression. So when we look at each other, the differences should point to the magnificence of the one that created us, and we are all expressions of the one that made us. So I should appreciate the uniqueness in you. You should appreciate the uniqueness in me, and not see that as something that points to a hierarchy of better or worse or less or more. No, you are his unique expression. And when my life and your life connect, we add to the whole in a much fuller way than we could individually. It's like an orchestra. The violins sound the way that they sound, but if we went to an orchestra and just listened to violins, it might be nice, but it's not the same sound as when we add the horn section and when we add percussion. And while everybody has a different sound, they all play off the same sheet of music to create something that they couldn't create individually. And that's how I choose to function, flow, and deal with everyone. You are God's unique expression, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that you're not my unique expression. um, so that's how I think about it. And I think, and I'm not necessarily saying that everybody should start with the same spiritual connection that I have, but if we could all get to a place where the differences are designed to be added to the whole, so together we could do something as humans greater than any one human could do by themselves, then I think we appreciate each other differently.
That's very beautiful, and I really appreciated the orchestra example, because I definitely think I mean, we're trying to reach toward harmony anyway.
Exactly.
And like you said, there's so many unique moving parts in that. And as a collective, we can certainly do way more than we can just as individuals, but we also have to retain our individual nature in order to do that, correct?
I completely agree. I don't think that you should try to be me and I should not try to be you. The beauty is that you are you and I'm me. And when we all come together, the beauty that is created is is much better than if you're trying to be me and I'm trying to be you, or I'm trying to reduce you something less than you, or you're trying to reduce me to something less than me. Uh, yeah, I don't see any other way um, to actually become what I think really is at the heart of most people. I believe even in all of the chaos and confusion, most people at their core want the same things. We want to be seen. We want to be appreciated. We want to be heard. We want to feel that we have something to add to the collective that is beneficial. That's what all of us really want. And I think if we can start there, then we can have a calmer conversation than um, trying to, for lack of a better way to explain it, Doc, just it feels like almost beating one another into submission.
Right. Yes. I find that I can't help but draw parallels to the health world, just because that's my wheelhouse, right? And
Right.
well, and yours to a large extent as well. But one of the things that's been so interesting for me to watch this year, and disheartening as well, is this idea of foregoing our individual choices in health for the sake of the community, right? And what I think we lose in that is the fact that if we are individually healthier, then the community is up leveled as well. And I think that there's some parallel, wouldn't you say, between kind of taking ownership of who we are and our personal health, for just because I'm using this example, in order to better society, instead of oh, you need to do your part this way. It's to find a certain way for you, instead of trusting your own intuition and your own instincts and knowing your own body, and making those choices as an adult, for the sake of your betterment, so that you can be your best self for everybody else, right?
I agree. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Doc.
No, that's kind of where I wanted to hand off the baton, actually, because I think
and I always want to, you always do get to see the calm side of me. I process stuff a little bit more chaotically sometimes in my missus. She gets to get sometimes the raw, unfiltered version of it all. Coming from my background in law enforcement, I was often, when you call the police, it is because things are chaotic and out of control, and so we go in and we say, okay, here's how things should proceed, and sometimes I think people, again, I think it's fear driven. I'm going to make you responsible for taking care of me, instead of me going, well, what am I contributing to the system that is not the most powerful version and expression of me? I think, because that is a hard look. If I look at myself and I say, I am contributing in such a way that it is lowering the potential for the greatest expression of everybody because I'm not doing my part, that is a real hard look. That's hard. So what do I do? Instead, I'm gonna, call the police, so to speak. I'm gonna say, well, you need to fix it. I don't know how many situations I responded to as a police officer. I was thinking, this is not really a police problem. This is an adulting problem. And I would go in and say, no, this is not a police problem. This is an adulting problem. You guys need to figure out how to grow up and together figure out how to work this out. And I think you're right. We have spun this fear machine up so much that people have lost I'm not going to say the ability, whether it's desire, whether it's the maturity to look inside and say, okay, this is what is going to be best for me, and then how does that contribute to the greater good? Instead, we say, well, let's let the system just kind of take care of us all, and that doesn't work, because as my sweet bride would say, we have to understand that anytime we say the system is necessary to fix everything, we have to understand that we are the system. And if we can't look individually, as you pointed out already, and say, what is my part, I think we'll just continue to go round and round, and it just never stops. So we have to say individually, how does my part contribute to the greater good, whatever that looks like, my part. So
Right. And I think I got, how am I going to say this? I think we've started hovering around this place of mediocrity as a culture. And I mean, I don't know what the driving force or catalyst of that has been. Perhaps it's been that, you know, a large majority of us have had a lot of creature comforts, and, you know, it's not been super hard. I mean, we joke about first world suffering or whatever, waiting in line for our coffee. But, you know, and I don't wish suffering on anybody, you know, but I do think it's part of being human on this planet and in these bodies that are mortal, right? And I think that I mean, you've said it before, like, we're here, so why not be awesome, right? You just quoted that this week, and I fully resonate with that, because just like with health, why wouldn't we want to make it better for ourselves? Why? I mean, of course, I know the reasons people are inhibited. I deal with it all the time in my patients and with myself, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like I mean, I joke with my patients that, like, we're on this trajectory, and hopefully we're just kind of always on the uphill slope, you know, even though we're going to have those sine wave kind of ups and downs along the way, and setbacks. And sometimes I think that some of our setbacks and adversities, whether it's as an individual or as a species or as a culture, are some of the biggest places of growth. And so I keep thinking about this year and a half, and all the social things that have happened, and all the things that have happened, you know, with lockdowns and everything else, and disagreements and silencing and censoring and all this stuff. And I keep thinking, like, maybe we're touching on that kind of low end of the pendulum as it's swinging the other direction, and that we kind of have to hit that area of pain, and like, the wound is opening up, right? And so we have to be able to look at it and let it heal finally. And so go ahead.
No, please finish, Doctor.
Well, I just was going to kind of tie it into race, because I feel like you have such a beautiful perspective on all of it. And I default to you so much because, you know, you represent many different backgrounds, and in your own life, you know, you've seen things from lots of different perspectives. So I feel like this racial issue that we're seeing, well, one, it's almost separating us more from each other, and that is really painful to watch. There's this place of both fear, like you've mentioned, but also kind of hatred in some ways, or just oh gosh, I basically, like, ratcheting people down to a certain level in order to somehow explain our history. I don't really know how to wrap my brain around that, because I just see human beings, and like you've mentioned before, our uniqueness makes us awesome. And then we also have this connectivity between us all, because we are of the same species, and if you believe in higher power, we're all of something bigger.
Absolutely. There is a saying that I have truly started to embrace. It comes out of Zulu culture, and the word is sawubona, and it means I see you. And that I seeing you is beyond the surface stuff. It's I see you. So when I see Doc Michelle, what I see are her dreams, her hopes, her fears, her strengths, her weaknesses, the same as I have. Regardless of what we look like on the outside, at the center of who we are as people, I believe all of those things exist. So for me, the start is I want to see you, not you as a white female in America. I want to see you as a person who just desires to have the opportunity to be the strongest, most powerful expression of herself in this world. So that's where I start. Second, I kind of think about I don't know if you ever saw the movie Coach Carter, and there's a scene in the movie Coach Carter where Samuel L. Jackson is asking his players what they're afraid of. And this one kid who he has a lot of difficulties on the team, he finally comes around near the end of the movie and he quotes this poem, and I can't remember exactly who it is. I want to say it's Maya Angelou, but it might not be her poem. But he says, it is our strength that is the frightening thing. That's the thing that's frightening. It's our strength that's frightening. And in the poem, he says, we don't do anybody a service being less than. So as for me, as I look at the whole race thing, and you're right, I have a perspective. I recognize that my perspective is my perspective, and it might be quite unique. Being a Black man, I grew up in a predominantly Black area for a good part of my life. I'm now married to a white woman. And I even hate saying it because it's just my queen. I'm just married to my queen. And I hate even reducing her to a white woman because she's so much more to me than a white woman. She's my queen. And, having been in law enforcement. So my perspective is my perspective, but I do believe I can speak to it. I would say this, and I thought about it looking at your little blurb that you sent me over email. I would say, privilege and a lot of those things which we're trying to spin around that. I think about opportunity. And I will say this. I will say that everybody has the opportunities that they have based on where they are, who they are, what they bring to the table in terms of attributes, either God-given or manifested through practice and education and all of those things. I would say that all of us have opportunities, and you probably had opportunities based on where you were, when you were, that were different from my opportunities. And the question for me always is, are we maximizing our opportunities? And instead of trying to separate it out that I think Black people have it worse than white people. Yeah, I understand history. So I'm not, because somebody's going to look at this and go, where is this guy coming from? And I accept history. I say, yes, let's talk about history. Some horrible things have happened in this country to Black people, but they happen to Asian people, and they happen to Native American people. And so if we reduce it to just Black people, well, what about a lot of the other people who have suffered, all of those things? Yep. So let's talk about history. But now let's talk about where we are. The reality is this, that all of us, regardless of the color of our skin, we all have opportunities greater than many generations before us. I think I've explained to you, my grandmother was a contemporary of Martin Luther King. So she was on the front end of it. And somebody asked me, what would your grandmother say if she was alive? And I would say my grandmother would say, is there work still to be done? Yes, there is still work to be done all the way around. I don't think it's just a white to Black thing. I think it's a Black to white thing, Black to Asian thing, Asian to Hispanic thing. I think all of those things. And she would say, there is work still to be done. She would also say, we have opportunities that we have never had before because of all of the people that came before us. And I think trying to drag us back down into history is actually cheapening the work that all of those people did before us. It is not living up to the potential that we have now. And so for me, um, my perspective is we all have opportunities. Are my opportunities the same as yours? No. Are your opportunities the same as mine? No. The question is, what did you do with all of the opportunities that were presented to you? And I would say that where I am in life right now is based on my maximizing of the opportunities that I got. And to some degree, it's piddling the way other ones that I had. So um, that's how I choose to approach it, as opposed to I don't have a chance because I'm not white, and therefore there is a privilege that I miss out on, because none of us chose to come the way that we came. We came the way that we came, and we're doing the best we have with what we've got. And again, I accept history, but I think we have more opportunity in every race, in every gender, more than we've ever had before. And the question is, what are you doing with what's been laid before you, as opposed to crying about, um, what happened 400 years ago? That's, I wasn't, I'm not trying to minimize it. And I'll just be honest, and I hope it's okay to say this, Doc, I don't know what it's like to be a slave. I've never been a slave. Never. I don't know what it's like. And I imagine that it's horrible, but for those who are descendants from slaves and those sorts of things, those people made a sacrifice so that we would never have to go back to that. So maximize your opportunities, all of us, Black, white, Asian, Native American, Hispanic, whatever. This country is not flawless. I've been working on something between perfect and flawless. This country is not flawless, but you know what? It is perfect in the sense that we all have a chance if we're willing to take the chances that we're given.
Absolutely. I think that's so beautifully said, and I really resonate with that and agree with you. I mean, we're in these bodies for a reason, and we have these experiences for a reason that we draw into our lives. And kind of, I guess, to harken back to what I mentioned earlier about worry being a misuse of the imagination,
Hmm.
we have this opportunity to focus on how we want things to be. And just like you said, we are flawed as a country, we're flawed as individuals also. And that's part of what makes us beautiful. Because then again, like, to use your word, we have opportunity to learn and grow and change those things, and to forgive those parts of ourselves and those in each other, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that to kind of think about the holographic type view of us as humans and the planet and the world and history and all of these things. And if we kind of think of almost the quantum time frame of things, right? It's almost like our duty to do the best we can. I mean, that's how I feel about so much of my life. It's like, well, my time is finite. I watched both of my parents pass away, and that is such a gift, because you recognize your own mortality in that. And instead of seeing it from this place of fear and dread, for me, it sparked so much life, because, they kind of passed on their life force into me, and gave me this window. And I could look at it a different way, couldn't I? I mean, I could definitely be forlorn and sad and dread my own finite time here. or I could just be better and take, like you said, use my opportunities that are presented to me, and learn and grow in the process, and forgive myself when maybe I pass something up, you know.
And
So I think we have choices in everything we do, and we've talked about this before, but there's a sense of loss, or maybe people have just kind of lost their purpose in some way, or their drive, or their feeling of meaning and connection. And I think that's been part of the nature of this year, and being isolated and all of that. I've certainly seen it in teenagers a lot, sadly. And so it's easy to grasp on to these big movements because it gives us this sense of like, oh, I am doing something powerful, or that has meaning, or that's going to make a difference. And I don't fault that. I think that's a great human instinct, right? But instead of jumping on bandwagons of like, that end up crushing other people, unfortunately. I mean, as we've
unfortunately,
seen, with lockdowns and all, why not just jump on our own bandwagon of being the most awesome person and sharing our gifts with others and trying to build other people up?
this morning, I started my day. There are a group of men in my church, and we meet together. And so the makeup is pretty unique. We have an Asian gentleman. He's Japanese by birth. He's married to a Caucasian lady, and he was there with both of his sons, who are 21 and 19. And then there's myself, and then we have three Caucasian men that we're all meeting. And I just use that to just kind of give you a picture of this group of guys. And we were just discussing, and the question came up: if tomorrow were your last day on earth, what would you do with today? And it it was none of the stuff that has all of us in a tizzy about life. Everybody at the table said, you know what? If tomorrow were my last day, today would be spent loving the people closest to me, and maybe trying to pass on something that could help them continue with their life.
Mm.
And I think you're speaking of purpose is huge. I think most of us, my grandfather would say it this way: a lot of people have opted to just aim themselves through life. They're just kind of pointing themselves through life. They don't really have a true direction or purpose. And if you stopped and asked people and said, okay, today is all you got, this is it today, tomorrow you're gone, I think today everybody would decide to be awesome. Everybody would, everybody, if you knew tomorrow was it, today you would decide to be awesome. Whatever awesome looks like to you. And I guarantee you, awesome would be spent pouring into lives in meaningful ways. And we could if we could take that and say, well, fundamentally, here's what we don't know. We don't know if tomorrow is our last day. So why not live today awesomely? When you wake up and your feet hit the ground, why not live awesomely? And I think you speak to something really good. People have lost their purpose. People don't see maybe any way out, so they've opted for these big causes and things like that. But um I'll just be perfectly honest with you. This is more meaningful to me, our relationship, our interaction, than you jumping on a computer on a post and oh, this is not fair, and we should, you know what, we live life, like, do something that matters. Go visit somebody, go really face to face, touch somebody, don't touch keyboards and that kind of stuff. Go touch people. Spend, if you think that matters, then make it matter. um yeah, I think this is the only shot we get, and if we this is what I believe, this is the only shot that we get. And how can I, maximize my impact with the time that I'm given? Brandon Lee, Bruce Lee's son, was famously quoted as saying, "The key to immortality is living a life worth remembering." And so how do we do that? My purpose, as my parents would say, you stay at a friend's house. When you leave it better than you found it. I'm trying to live life that I can leave the world, the places that God has ordained me to touch. I want to leave them better than I found them. And that's my purpose. And I think ultimately that's everybody's purpose. Yours is, through being a doctor and helping people heal and all of those things. And what you're doing with your podcast, you're saying, hey, this is my purpose. I want to leave the world better than I found it. And I think if we could get back to that, then maybe some of the other stuff would be less important stuff in the grand scheme of things. So
Yes, that's very profound and awesome. um, I think that there's these waves that happen as a culture, and we're in one of them right now. And some of us are surfing it and riding it gracefully, and some of us aren't. And some of us are going to fall and get crushed along the way, and some of us are going to rise up. And I don't say that in a righteous way. I think that getting crushed in the wave teaches you a lot too. But I think that we have to figure out a way, or hopefully are figuring out a way, where we can all ride the wave together and give each other space to do cool tricks, or to just barely hang on, or whatever that looks like. And that, to me, involves compassion. Because sometimes I'll go into the store or something, and there'll be somebody in front of me that's complaining or annoying or whatever it might be. And I always try, depending on my mood, I guess, but I mostly try to consider that perhaps they had a really terrible morning, or maybe they've recently had a tragedy, or maybe they're just a challenging person. That's probably the culmination of some things in their life that have defined them, or they've allowed to define them. And so much of this year, I can't really, it's just such an important reference point, I guess, but has been about assuming something about somebody else. If they have a mask on, you assume one thing or another, or if they wear a certain, social justice hat or whatever, then that puts them in another. If they wear a red hat, it puts them in another realm. And we just make these assumptions. I've abutted against this a lot in my speaking out about some of the things with COVID and how it's been managed or mismanaged. And people have made assumptions. Even my own kids sometimes are like, "Mom, where's your political leaning now?" And it's irrelevant, because my impetus for all of that is to help people find their healthiest self, and to try and see people with compassion and recognize that there has been loss of life and life, and how can we make that better.
Right. To if I can go back to, what you started about the wave, which I thought was a really beautiful picture. Um, I again, I think in images, and a lot of really cool stories for me come from the study of scripture. And there's in Mark's gospel, Jesus is with some of his disciples, and they're in a boat, and they're going to the other side. And it said that this great storm arose, and the disciples are freaking out. They are literally beside themselves, right? And Jesus is asleep on the boat. He's sleeping and they're freaking out. So they wake him up and they're basically like, "Hey, don't you care that we're about to die?" And if you grew up in church, you know the story. And Jesus quiets the storm and he says, "Why do you have such little faith?" Well, I kind of look at that story, and we think about Jesus and we go, but he was God incarnate, and that's different. But here's the interesting thing. Before the journey, he told them, "We're going to the other side." So he already spoke the destination to him. He already said, "We're going to make it to the other side." Now, he never told them that it was going to be Mai Tais and sun rays, and he never said that. All he said was, "We're going to make it to the other side." And so, kind of going back to your wave thing, if all of us could pause for a moment and go, "You're right. We have these waves in culture, right?" If we all go, "Hey, we're going to make it to the other side." Now the question becomes, how do we want to get to the other side? Do we all want to be a frazzled mess when we get to the other side? Do we want to intentionally blow each other up so that we're carrying body parts when we get to the other side? Or do we want to look at one another, and I look at Doc Michelle looks at Coach T, and we go, "How can I help you get to the other side in the best way possible?" Yep. The storm is going to take something from us. The storm is also going to allow things to manifest in us. How are we going to get to the other side? Because here's the reality. Mankind is going to get to the other side of this. In America, we're going to get to the other side of this. Here's the question. How are we going to be on the other side? How would we like to be on the other side? Are we going to tear each other up, beat each other down, blow each other up, and now we get to the other side and we have a less powerful expression of ourselves? Or are we all going, we're all on this boat ride together, we're going to get to the other side, let's get there the very, very best way that we possibly can, because now I give you space, you give me space, I help you, you help me. That's one of the ways that I choose to look at it. Your that wave was a really great picture, and it triggered this in me. The reality is, we're going to get there, guys. How are we going to get there? You know, um, do we want to be do we want to be a mess when we get to the other side, or would we like to get to the other side and say, "You know what, it threw us around a little bit, but by golly, we all made it, and we're a better version of ourselves for it." And I think that's that's how we give each other space. And to assumption, I was listening to John Maxwell this morning, and he said something. He said, we don't see people the way that they are, we see people the way that we are.
Mhm.
So before I pass a judgment about Doc Michelle, if I feel a judgment coming up, that's generally an indicator for me to check some things about me. And again, going back to early in our conversation, that's scary because that requires me to answer some questions. Where's my level of maturity, growth, all of those things. Do I see this person as worn out and tired and angry and upset? Because in fact, I'm worn out, tired, angry, and upset. So that's, my little take on that.
Yes. Well, and also thank you for that other example as well, just as a segue to the wave example, because I do think you're right. It's like we have to figure out how to be calm in the storm so that we're not a disaster when we've ridden it out.
Yeah.
And like the carnage, we have control of some of the carnage by our choices in everyday life, and I think one of the things that martial arts, in my much more limited experience than yours, of course, but one of the most beautiful gifts I've gotten from it is mindset and awareness in the moment, because we hear the catchphrase flow state and all of that. When you're in the chaos of random attacks, or someone coming up behind you and grabbing your throat, or even just the effort that it takes to perform, where you have to kind of dig deep, whether it's any kind of physical challenge, really. If you don't find that sense of calm and peace in the chaos, then you're adding to the chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't make, it shuts down our logical thinking, and it shuts down our ability to make choices, and instead we're just reactive. And I think a lot of people go through life that way, where they're already kind of at this heightened state of, whether it's anxiety or fear, or all those emotions, I think, drive that. And that's why some sort of practice or training allows us to be calm in kind of a manipulated state, or orchestrated state. And then when we're kind of let loose into the chaos of life, we can tap into that again, because we've established those neurological pathways. And so we can be zen in the midst of something that might be challenging or distressful, or a loss, or whatever it might be. So I just kind of encourage people to figure out what that practice and that training is. It doesn't have to be martial arts, but if it's something where you sit quietly every day, or you have moving meditation in the woods, or whatever that looks like, the more we practice those things, the more we have control over our response in life.
Going back to our first podcast, I think one of the things we talked about was the breath, breathing.
Yes.
And I think that there would be some people that would listen in on this podcast, and they may say, well, the study of martial arts, I probably wouldn't do that, and I don't know if I understand meditation enough to get into that. But here's something that we all have access to, and breathing is one of the most unique things in human experience, because it is something that we can consciously control. It's one of two functions in the body that occur both consciously and autonomically. Blinking is the other one. The most unique thing about the breath is a segue, because we can control it consciously, between our psychology and our physiology. So even just the practice of breathing, just learning how to breathe in a stressful situation, it can change heart rate, it can change pulse, it can change our ability to think and process. So for a lot of people, they might say, well, I don't know if I would ever go study martial arts, or, I don't know if I completely understand meditation, but we have a built-in tool all the time, and it's just breathing. And I would say somebody just going through a daily practice of just, practicing on consciously on their breath, what's happening doing every inhalation and exhalation can do a lot of things for health. And it's something that can be transferable into those chaotic states. I think that can help. And I agree with you 100%. And I try to bring all of that into all of the other practices. And, as coming from the kettlebell world, how the breath and even kettlebells go together, and martial arts, how the breath and martial arts and yoga and breathing, all of those things go together. So I agree with you that we've become okay with being the guys freaking out in the boat instead of like, why was Jesus not freaking out in the boat? Why was he not freaking out in the boat? And he used the word, he said, peace, be still. And in Greek, the word peace was undisturbed. And I would, I've preached on this, and I told our congregation before that Jesus Christ was in the same circumstance, but he was in a different condition.
Yeah.
He was in the same circumstance, right? But he was in a completely different condition. He was undisturbed. His condition was undisturbed, even though he was in the same set of circumstances that they were in. And I think a practice of undisturbedness is good. And I think a lot of people, probably, because they don't feel that they have a response. The only response is one of loss of control, because they don't, in my martial arts training, I remember our instructor, he said, the longer you're on this journey, he said, what you find is that you actually become a calmer person. And he said, the reason why is because you know that you have a response. So there is some ego that you let go of when you're like, I don't have anything to prove in this situation. So I think all of those practices can be good. Some physical practice, whether it's martial arts or physical training, conditioning, strengthening, just breathing, meditating. I think all of those can help us have a response to the chaos that we may find ourselves in.
That's so important, and I absolutely agree. I think the breath is such an easy place to practice, and like you said, it just has this. It's the kind of turnstile of our emotional response, our thinking response, and our physiological response, and we have so much control over it every day, anytime. It's always accessible. I mean, one of the things in my handouts to my patients is, taking some breaths, and I usually tell them, do it at the stoplight. I mean, instead of getting aggro in your car at a traffic circle, roundabout, or whatever, like take some breaths then and practice, and then you will get back in tune with your body again. And as far as it's so interesting to me as we're talking to see kind of the individual nature that translates into the collective. And so just like we are a compilation of cells and, physiological parts like the veins and the nervous system and all of that, and our bodies are one, each of us is an individual cell of sorts in the collective human race. And we have to train each other a little bit with that too. And I think, people ask me, like, why am I so committed to my physical fitness or whatever. And it's like, because I hope that I radiate that out to others. I mean, yes, selfishly, it feels good. And I like to be stronger, and I like to, I want to make sure I can do all the things I want to do in my lifetime and not be broken when I turn 50 next year. But sorry, I had to do it. But, I think that we are a collective of parts as well for the species that we're in. And it's kind of our responsibility to be radiating out our unique gifts to others and take some ownership of that so that we can have that collective breath to slow us down and to allow us to respond instead of react.
I would.
So it's
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to say that
no, that was the end of my thought.
I
So
was, I'm in total agreement with you there. I think that when we are the strongest, most powerful versions of ourselves, what it does is it gives everybody else permission to be the strongest, most powerful version of themselves. It creates space for people to grow. Like that poem, I think that when we play small, when we don't do our part, it actually stifles and it plugs up the system. And as an organism, the human race, we become less than. So every place that that I'm allowed to touch, because I'm not touching everybody, but everybody touches everybody who touches everybody who touches everybody, and then eventually everybody's touched. Um, if I see my expression of the most powerful version of me as opening the gateway for you to be the most powerful expression of you, then we win. And I think that, for me, it's all summed up this way. When eyes collide, we lose. When eyes collide, we lose. When individuals, I being me and you're an I, when we're running into each other, we lose. So what we need to learn how to do is understand that we are responsible for we. We are responsible for we. It is everybody's job to make us as vibrant as we can be, and that starts individually, but and then it falls into the collective.
beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I think that we should finish up there because that's like the perfect launching pad for us all being awesome in our individual lives and for each other and with each other.
Oh man, what a dream. I maybe I'm naive, but I believe it's possible. I've too many great people in my life to believe otherwise. I'm honored every single day when I think about people like yourself and my wife, and some of the awesome people that I get to serve at my church and in the gym. Um, I see it on a real level that when we just dispense with all of the foolishness and we just come together, really amazing things happen. And I don't understand why that. I refuse to maybe accept that can't happen on a much bigger level.
Yes, absolutely. I think one time you said to me when we were talking about being in a fight that if I don't believe in myself, then I've got two people against me. And I think that we have forgotten to believe in our species and our human race, unfortunately, or many people have, and so we've got ourselves against us. So it's time to just change that thinking and believe in ourselves as individuals and as, a community again. And I really
Love.
feel like that's the answer, like coming back to kind of the village mentality, and how can I be the pebble in the pond that benefits you, or that you benefit somebody else because of something I said or something I did, or just getting a hug from somebody in the morning or whatever. Those things create this ridiculously powerful ripple effect. And yeah, I'm an idealist like you in some ways, and I think that we can literally change the world if we change ourselves and those around us just a little bit for the better.
It's like Monsters Inc., Doc. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Monsters Inc., right?
Yes.
So they're using fear, and they found that laughter was 3 times more powerful than screams. And I believe, we've tried the energy of hate. We've tried the energy of division, and it's energy, so it moves the system. I don't think anywhere good, but why not try the energy of love and acceptance, and why not try that. I have a little mantra. I do a little thing in my church where we talk about tough issues, and I say the rules of engagement are simple. We love first. We love first. And I think that that's a word that maybe in our culture people relegated to a Hallmark card, but I believe it's one of the most powerful things that we have available. We love first. We listen. We see each other. I want to hear what you have to say. I lean in because it's hard to hate people up close, and I learn, and that's I think can really change the game. If we love, listen, lean in, and learn from one another, I think what we can do is beyond powerful. So
Amen, coach. Amen to that. Oh man, thank you so much for your beautiful wisdom and insight and your willingness to share it. Thank you for being my mentor and helping me grow and learn and be challenged all the time. And especially thank you for your time today. I'm so grateful. And all of you, I appreciate your attention and your listening and your open-mindedness and your willingness to kind of think differently potentially. And if anything, take away from this that you have control over your opportunities and you can take advantage of them, and you can take a deep breath anytime.
anytime, Doc. It's a pleasure. I love spending time with you, even if it's virtually. Thank you so much for what you're doing, on a health perspective to our physical bodies, and being willing to create a forum to brave some of these topics. I know that a lot of this kind of talk may not be popular, but and that's okay, and that's okay. But I thank you for who you are, and thank you for trusting me, and I really appreciate it.
Absolutely an honor. All right, well, get out there and do something amazing today. And I will see you at the gym soon. And the rest of you, I will see you on the next episode.
See you, Doc. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.